Voters in 6 states, as we've been saying, will have their chance to weigh in on the Democratic presidential primary today. As John Yang reports, the two main contenders are on the trail to make their closing arguments, focusing heavily on delegate-rich Michigan.
Michigan, I'm counting on you in a big way.
The Democratic presidential field that once numbered in the dozens is now down to just two. Tonight, they face off head-to-head for the first time.
The people of Michigan understand that there are very substantive differences between Joe Biden and myself.
6 states hit the polls today for a total of 352 delegates. Washington, Missouri, Mississippi, Idaho, North Dakota, and the day's biggest delegate prize, Michigan. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders scored a narrow upset win there in 2016 over Hillary Clinton, propelled in part by the support of white working-class voters. His campaign is counting on holding that support in 2020, but former Vice President Joe Biden is leading in recent polls and has been making inroads with some of those voters.
Wall Street didn't build this country. You all built the country.
Earlier today, Biden met with Detroit factory workers and stressed his union roots, but he was also challenged by one voter for his past statements on guns. Looming over the campaign season marked by handshakes, selfies, and jam-packed arenas, the threat of coronavirus. Not only did both candidates cancel rallies tonight,
get your hand sanitizer.
Last night, Biden's team offered hand sanitizer to voters entering his Detroit event. And at a Fox News town hall, Sanders said the outbreak strengthens the case for Medicare for all.
You got millions of people in this country today who may feel that they have a symptom, but you know what? They cannot afford to go to a doctor.
As voters weigh in Michigan and across the country today, Biden and Sanders are preparing to battle it out in primary states in the weeks to come. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm John Yang.
We now get the on-the-ground reports from states voting today, and we begin with Michigan. That is, as you're hearing, the biggest prize of the night. I'm joined from Ann Arbor by Tim Alberta, the chief political correspondent for Politico. Tim, great to see you. Thank you for joining us. So we know Bernie Sanders eked it out 4 years ago. What does it look like this time?
Well, quite a bit different, Judy, to put it mildly. I think this campaign has really, in some way, brought some clarity to Bernie Sanders' weaknesses with certain demographic groups, namely African Americans and suburban women. And those are two groups that are going to be critical here in Michigan. You know, 4 years ago, Hillary Clinton lost very narrowly in the state, despite beating Bernie Sanders by 40 points among black voters. And if you wonder how that could possibly happen, the answer is because not very many of them showed up. What we're expected to see tonight is a big spike in voting across the board, and particularly among African Americans, among suburban women. And really, if Joe Biden can just sort of keep Bernie Sanders from really running up the score among working class white voters, the former vice president is expected to have, I think, a very good night here.
What is it that African American voters are saying they see in Joe Biden?
You know, more than anything else, Judy, it's a trust that they have in him, and I think by some extension because of the trust that Barack Obama placed in him. I was with Joe Biden last night at a rally in Detroit, and it was remarkable to see some of the energy, the enthusiasm among black voters for Joe Biden that you just frankly didn't see for Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. And when I talked with some of those voters, they essentially all said the same thing. Look, we know this man. We have a relationship with him. We trust him. People who we trust vouch for him. He's been here to our community in Detroit time after time. He's fought for us. We've gotten to know him. So there is just an intimacy with Joe Biden that frankly a lot of these voters have not had with other candidates.
Tim Alberta with Politico, thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
And now to Mississippi, where the polls close in just under 2 hours. And I'm joined by Adam Ganush of Mississippi Today. It is a nonprofit news organization based in Jackson. So, Adam, we've just been listening to Tim Alberta talk about what the African-American voters, what many of them see in Joe Biden in Michigan. What about in Mississippi, where I believe African Americans make up, what, 75% of the Democratic primary vote?
That's right, Judy. You know, 75%-ish of Democratic primary voters in the state are African American. Mississippi itself, just in terms of population, has the highest percentage of African American residents of any state in the country. What Tim was saying about Michigan and sort of Joe Biden's success, particularly with African American voters there, is true here. I really do think there's a trust factor here with former Vice President Biden. You know, you hear all the time from Mississippi voters who have really put a lot of their faith and trust in President Obama over the years, and certainly by extension Vice President Biden. You know, while that's the case, you know, voters here are not monolithic. No demographic is in any state. I know this. You know, Jackson Mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba, who is an African American, sort of seen as a rising star in the national progressive wing of the Democratic Party, he endorsed Sanders. So, you know, looking here at Mississippi, I think we can expect a sizable victory for Biden tonight, but there will be some African American voters who do end up casting their votes for Senator Sanders tonight.
And just very quickly, you were saying there is what you might call an establishment piece or wing of the Democratic vote as well as a progressive piece.
That's right. That's right. You know, the establishment, I'd say the more moderate Democrats in Mississippi certainly have held the power here. That has not changed in the last 4 years. You can look at 4 years ago, the Clinton-Sanders race in Mississippi. Mississippi provided Hillary Clinton sort of that establishment Democratic pick with her largest margin of victory of any state in the country, with 83% to Sanders' 16.5%. So, yeah, you're right, Judy. That's certainly the case. There is a progressive faction in this state, but it's just not sizable enough, I don't think, to win too many delegates for Sanders today.
Adam Ganeshow reporting from Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you, Adam, and we'll see you later tonight. And now on to Washington State. It has the second biggest pot of delegates at stake in tonight's contest. Joining us from Seattle is Donna Blankenship. She's the politics editor at the PBS member station KCTS 9 Crosscut. So, Donna, 89 delegates at stake. Bernie Sanders did very well there 4 years ago. What's it looking like now?
It's looking, the last poll showed they were tied, Bernie Sanders and the former vice president, but now we think that Joe Biden is on the ascension, according to our pollster. So anything can happen, but it looks like late voters are pushing toward Biden.
And 4 years ago, you had, what, caucuses? This time you're switching to a primary. How do you think that's affecting, what do you hear from voters about how that may affect? Go ahead.
So we're expecting record turnouts. I talked to the Secretary of State today, Kim Wyman. She said that she expects 60% of registered voters to turn in ballots by the end of today. And last 4 years ago, the caucuses went for Bernie Sanders, but we also had a primary, which was just a beauty contest, and it went for Hillary Clinton. So Washington, you just don't know what's going to happen. We're an interesting state.
No question about it. We will be watching, but you're absolutely right. You had both the caucuses and the so-called beauty contest primary 4 years ago. This time, it's just no caucuses.
Yeah. That's right. No caucuses. Well, there'll be caucuses to choose the delegates, but that's just a party function. The actual delegates will be assigned according to the primary vote.
All right. Donna Blankenship with KCTS. Very good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.